Knowledge and approval is required in order to create a valid will. The person creating that will must know of the content of the will and its effect. At law, there is a presumption of knowledge and approval where you have a will that is validly prepared and executed. There are exceptions to the presumption of knowledge and approval for certain people who, for example, are blind, deaf, dumb, illiterate. There are also circumstances where if a will has been signed by another person at the direction of the testator, evidence is required as to knowledge and approval in order to overcome that presumption. The burden of proof is the legal description for what must be proved in order to make out a claim. In the context of civil courts, which is where contested probate occurs, the burden of proof is balance of probabilities. That is to say, you have to prove that it's more likely than not, or in numeric terms, 51% or more, in order to make out your claim. The evidence needed to contest a will is wide-ranging, but generally speaking, one first of all looks to the circumstances surrounding the will. So if the will is professionally drawn, we would look to obtain a copy of the will file. We would also ask certain questions of the person who prepared the will. That's often known as a Lark v. Nugas request. Once we have a copy of the will, we will look beyond that to the medical records of the person that created the will to understand what their health, condition and vulnerability was like around that time. Beyond that, we will then look to witnesses and those around the person who created the will to understand their behaviour and their thoughts and their actions around that time. But obviously those are not exhaustive. One will also look to other things such as correspondence, messages and possibly even bank statements that might give some indication as to what was happening around the circumstances of the suspected will. The evidence needed to try and fend off a claim that challenges a will for knowledge and approval is usually a clear note that the person who created the will read and understood the contents. If that person can then be asked to provide a summary of what was in the will, that can also add weight to that defence.